Hello and welcome to One Voice here on Asia One with me, Craig Vermey. In today's show, climate change is no longer a warning about the future. It is becoming a defining story of the present. Across Europe, temperatures have surged beyond 40 degrees Celsius in several countries, triggering health emergencies, school closures, wildfires, and widespread disruption. France, Spain, Italy and parts of the Balkans are enduring one of the continent's most intense heat waves on record. In Spain alone, officials now attribute more than 1,000 deaths during June to extreme heat, while in France also recorded around 1,000 deaths as hospitals struggled to protect the elderly and medically vulnerable. Scientists warn that heat is now Europe's deadliest weather hazard, with climate warming making these events both more frequent and more intense. At the same time, Asia faces the opposite threat. Monsoon rains are intensifying across South and Southeast Asia, raising fears of catastrophic flooding, landslides, mass displacement, and in some of the world's most densely populated regions. Climate researchers say a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, making rainfall heavier and more destructive when it arrives. Together, these extremes tell the same story. One continent is baking while another prepares to drown. Different disasters, but the same climate system under strain. To help unpack what is happening behind the headlines, joining me now is Zainab Narim, Climate Policy Advisor. Thank you very much for joining me. So let's start with Europe, because that's making all the headlines at the moment. So how is this year different from last year?
So, yeah, thank you so much. So, according to European Environment Agency's latest report that they have concluded after Copernicus Marine Services satellite data revealed something that was very anomalous and that hasn't happened before. So, the seas near Europe and especially near France, and also including the North Sea, the Gulf of Lion, and the Baltic Sea. So, the anomaly that they recorded around May was that the sea surface temperature was exceeding beyond 6 degrees Celsius, which has never happened before. Even earlier this year, scientists were warning that oceans and seas that act as carbon sinks, they are warming up at a rapid pace. So when this happens, the normal natural weather phenomena, including El Nino, La Nina, and the Omega block systems that are temporary and that occur after every few years, that can become more recurring, and that can enhance the or exacerbate the global climate warming, specifically around certain regions of the world. So this time, what Europe has experienced is basically because of the warming of the seas, the heat dome has covered the Europe, and also it is it has trapped the high pressure system between two low pressure systems, just like an omega symbol. So the dome is, and that's why it has experienced such intense heat, and the heat index temperature, which is the feel-like temperature or the wet bulb temperature, is exceeding more, which makes it difficult for people to sweat or to cool their bodies, which is a normal process when there's heat usually. So that's why the deaths are more increasing in Europe, and this is going to continue for a few more days. Similar thing is being experienced now in the USA starting just yesterday. So yes, this is the current scenario there.
So you brought it up there that El Nino has a similar effect. Now we're expecting quite a large El Nino this year to kick in any day now, really, and that is warmer seas and more rain coming across and hitting Australia across the Pacific. Because, am I right, one El Nino goes anti-clockwise, and yes, so it pushes the warmer water towards Australia. So what caused the same effect?
So El Nino pushes warmer water towards Australia and towards South Asia, and that's why most of the disasters that included the super floods of 2022, the heat dome of 2022, were determined Pacific Ocean. El Nino that starts from there, and now El Nino has kicked in. It's been 2 to 3 weeks now. So what we are expecting is mid-July it's going to peak, which means that this time El Nino usually starts when surface temperature of Pacific Ocean exceeds 0.5 degrees Celsius to 1. But this time the temperature has exceeded to 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, again an anomalous temperature. And this kind of El Nino was experienced by the world back in 1877, which recorded a lot of deaths throughout the world and famine. But at that time, science was not that advanced. So now this similar kind of heat dome is being expected in the South Asia, but this is going to bring more rampant sort of rainfall. The rains are going to be unpredictable, something that is being experienced now in the northern as well. And also because monsoon has started, it was being suppressed because of El Nino, not like last year when we had early monsoon and flooding in Pakistan. So this time monsoon has just started from the Bay of Bengal, and El Nino, because it's too humid, humidity makes the rainfall more worse, and cloudburst sort of events can be triggered in different regions of the same South Asia, that is more populous region in the world, and that is most vulnerable as of now. So yes, this is happening, and this is going to create not just that we can have rainfall, it is going to create more floods, because when El Nino is there, the capacity of Earth to absorb water declines because of intense heat waves. So even if it's normal rains, it's going to cause flooding. And what happens when there are more floods in these areas? Because this is agrarian land, so agriculture gets impacted. Not only because of heat, our agricultural produce has declined this year, but because of floods, it's going to be impacted again. So yes, this is the scenario that is being pushed in the region of South Asia.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because the El Nino is in the Pacific, but it actually is changing the weather patterns far from the Pacific. And how does it keep pushing across mountains?
Absolutely. So what happens in Pacific Ocean? It distributes warm waters towards Australia and South Asia, and also towards the Americas. So when El Nino begins, it pushes more. The trade winds usually they get weakened, and more warm water gets pushed towards the South Asia region, and towards America, the warm waters are pushed, but sometimes it can turn into hurricanes and tornadoes in this season when El Nino begins. So what happened? It pushes the warm waters, it pushes the warm winds towards South Asia, and it tries to stop clouds of monsoon, in the Arabian Sea and in the Bay of Bengal as well. But because we do have mountainous regions, the Himalayas, and we also have the western disturbances coming from Afghanistan side and the Middle Eastern side. So sometimes, when they collapse with monsoon and El Nino is there, it can trigger more disastrous sort of rainfall on the mountainous regions of Punjab and of northern Pakistan, even northern India. So yes, this is the exact same pattern that I have described you. This is happening here that we are experiencing.
So these weather patterns act people immensely and can ruin lives and cause numerous deaths. They also have an ongoing effect on our planet with the Great Barrier Reef, for instance. This warming water is going to kill off much of the coral. So does that have an ongoing effect in the future?
Yes, I'll share a very interesting phenomena with you. So along the coast of Arabian Sea in Karachi, in Pakistan, what happened is that there are so many shellfish that start to appear, and it just fills up the entire beach. This is a phenomena that says was very, it used to be rare, but it is becoming more common. Why? Because oceans are warming up. So yes, it's not just the Great Barrier Reef, but the entire marine life that's being threatened as of now because of the intense warming. And it is going to create an impact not just for South Asia region or Europe, it's impacting the small island states, the coastal communities that are, totally dependent upon the fisheries and marine life for their livelihood. So yes, It has, everything is connected when we talk about climate change impacts. So that is why there is a global consensus. There was a global consensus back in Paris through Paris Agreement that we all need to do shared but differentiated responsibilities, and a collective action is required. But unfortunately, the warnings, they were not considered, in real times. They thought that this is going to be some future event, especially people in the developed countries. Although they keep on investing, but maybe we were not prepared as a global community. We were not prepared for this kind of emergency. Now we still have time to do the changes, only if we align our development patterns with climate action. Yes.
So the Paris Agreement really did fall apart. It held by anybody, really. As you said, it was just sort of pushed into something we'll worry about later. And obviously, global warming is now, we're seeing it in real time, real deaths, real heat. So what can be done now?
Now, the time is that this is about global climate justice. And when I talk about justice, it's not just one region of the world, it's the entire world I'm talking about. So climate change recognizes no borders. So those who, who have developed and they are now on a clean trajectory of development, they need to share their knowledge and capacities with those who are still, trying harder and who are going through it a lot, the impacts of climate change. It has to be a balanced approach, and those in the developing regions, they need to upscale their actions also. The finance disbursement, even that was talked about in Bonn climate talks and even during London Climate Week, the disbursement needs to be ensured. There must be grants, there must be support, there must not be loans. Although we must treat climate change or climate action as a business case, but for developing and vulnerable countries, making it a business case is extremely difficult, because this is part of, whatever is happening there, and this is part of their survival now. We have shared resources throughout the world, the transboundary resources. Now conflict is arising based on, the sharing of ecological resources. So how climate diplomacy looks into it or helps, that is now the question. And even if now we are not going to treat it as a traditional security threat for the entire world, it's challenging everything, whatever, we have done so far in context of development gains. So in that context, maybe we need to revise our, voluntary actions and make it more towards mandatory actions around climate change, because it is threatening the survival of everyone living on this planet. And as of now, not everyone is to shift to Mars in near future. We need to survive here. So how we are going to improve the planet, that is the question.
So when somebody like Donald Trump, there's no such thing as global warming, how much damage is that doing in the bigger picture for smaller nations who really can't afford to invest in infrastructure? What is that doing to the bigger picture?
Absolutely. USA backing off from the Paris Agreement and then the Global Climate Fund is a huge setback to the entire global climate, action. That could have that was given a push when US joined it. So yes, that is a setback for the entire world, especially for the developing countries, because there's no longer climate grants coming up for them. Now it's more loans. Secondly, this is irony, because just yesterday, the entire heat dome has engulfed USA, and the temperature is exceeding 105 degree Fahrenheit. So it means that climate change has USA as well, and it has been over the last few years. US has been suffering through it. So even now, somebody, if leadership says it's a hoax, they're just living in a lie, or they're not able to accept the truth because it's impacting their homes as well. So I think this is one of the areas where other countries are now trying to emerge as a leader in climate diplomacy. For example, China. So they are investing in green sustainability now. And I think that is where US needs to look at, because that is one of the greatest development threat to this world, climate change. And any country who's going to invest in it is going to lead the great, global development agenda. So I think that is now a question mark for US as well, what exactly they're calling development here.
Today, I'm looking at climate warming. and that it is no longer a distant warning, but a present-day reality, with Europe facing deadly heat waves while Asia prepares for increasingly intense monsoon rains. Now, El Nino event is developing in the Pacific. Scientists are warning that these extremes could intensify further across the globe. To help us understand why this is happening, with me is Zainab Narim, climate policy expert and advocate. Now, thank you for staying with me. Now, what does heavier, erratic weather mean for the world? So it's not just rain in Asia, it's heat in Europe. And is there a way to prepare for it? Did the scientists see this coming this year?
Absolutely. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is a network of scientists throughout the world. They have been working to understand the overall climate change phenomena and patterns and everything. So they have been warning the world through their, assessment reports. And their last report was a sixth assessment report where they indicated the regions that are at the, warming of the world and the regions that are going to suffer more and what needs to be done. So it's not just a scientific report. They always give the policy summary for the policymakers as well to understand, so that the layman can understand what exactly is in there for the world. But unfortunately, I believe that not everyone, for that summary is not understandable by everyone throughout the world. So that is why there are different climate conferences and advocacy sessions happening to make it more understandable for everyone. So warning has been there. This is not something new for the world. This has been there when there was rampant fossil fuel burning. The development trajectory was unclean. The growth patterns were unclean. They were warning even then. But because every country has their own political goals as well. So climate change has now become a global political agenda. So how it's going to shape up the future of your countries. There are so many countries, small island states, who will no longer be able to survive, and they're looking for other islands because the island is literally, because of the sea level rising, it's going to disappear soon. So yes, this is happening. It's what it means exactly. The food security is threatened. The trade is threatened. The goods exports is threatened throughout the world. The livelihood, it's going to fuel migration. Migration is not something that happens only because of conflict. It happens because of climate change, when they're not able to find the fish to sell to the market because of warming oceans. When they're not able to survive the intense floods, they have to relocate. Illegal migration patterns are also being determined. So the world needs to rethink what exactly is, how they're going to secure their borders from climate change, because it does not recognize ones. So yes, food insecurity, economic inflation, trade, disconnection is going to be there. When glaciers are melting, it's going to create, lesser space for livable land and areas in coastal communities. So these are some of the major challenges that the world need to look at.
So you look at, you talk about smaller islands, and one that comes to my mind is Kiribati in the Pacific, and they're losing meters. I mean, it's a very small island nation to start with. I think famously the foreign minister stood at the end in the water and said, this used to be land at the United Nations. He sent a video. So it really is happening now. But people then have a very cold winter, say in Europe, lots of snow, and they go, oh, it's not climate warming, look at the snow. But climate warming also puts that moisture into the air and as snow. How does that work? Can you explain?
Exactly. Climate change has disrupted the natural weather. And when natural weather patterns, it includes even, the polar vortex. Then these are scientific terms. I don't want to get into that. But yes, definitely the winter patterns are affected as well. For example, just last year in Canada, they did not experience a lot of snow, but during the winter season. But what they experienced was, it is usually, the spring season, a lot of snow and, a lot of cool weather. Similar thing was experienced by other regions in the world. Just for example, in Pakistan, we did not get snow during winter season. But when we got snow was the season that we usually term as spring season. right before summers. So the patterns are shifting, and sometimes there is so much intense snow. There's also a phenomenon of global cooling that is related to the pollutants in the air, the aerosols specifically. So that is to how much we are polluting the earth. So it all depends upon human activities now. Global balance of the climate and weather patterns has been totally disrupted. So that is why this is one of the key reasons. And then the vehicular emissions are air pollution is becoming worse day by day. This is one of the key reasons that health cost burden is also there. Although that is indirect, but pandemics are going to become more common when ice will melt. It's going to reveal more viruses and bacteria. So yes, the alarm level is quite high. But then we also have certain actions that can reverse some of these challenges, or some have become irreversible, but still we are not losing hope around it. But we need investments, we need priorities of the governments around those investments, and we need a balance of justice in the world, so everyone is getting access to the technology through which they can drive climate action.
So investment into what technology would you like to see?
For example, you were talking about small island states. So for small island states around renewable energy, they want to explore it in their oceans, the coastal areas. Then they have desalination plants, and then their renewable energy is renewable energy. For other regions, for example, in South Asia, ours is based on solarization and wind patterns, and even is now being introduced. For Africa region, it is different. So every region has its different needs. Europe has been investing in this kind of technology for long. Their laws are getting stringent. But even if Europe has, even if they achieve climate neutrality, they do trade with other regions that are climate vulnerable, and then those regions are not able to, strengthen their action without the financing. So that is the kind of balance I'm talking about. Financing based on the needs of the regions, and financing based on, program-based finance, not project-based finance. That never works. And that does not only include giving money, that also includes building technical capacities, that also includes knowledge transfer. So this is the thing. And then on what exactly we mean when we say sustainable development. Agenda 2030 is now being threatened because rules-based order in the world is getting challenged. So how are we going to rethink, the climate smart development? That is the debate we need to focus on. There is some sort of fear among the global leaders, especially in climate diplomatic forums. They do not address, or they do not want to talk about those challenges, like the conflict that is arising over shared resources. So why are we, why are we fearful about these kind of discussions? When we talk about climate, it is a political agenda. So why not discuss every aspect attached to it? There's a level of hypocrisy also. I'm not blaming any region of the world, but among all, when we talk about climate change as a global development agenda. Now, as Agenda 2030 is being threatened, what is beyond 2030? That is a debate we need to discuss.
Mm-hmm. And 2030 is not very far away. So if can we slow the warming? I mean, is it possible to turn the clock back?
Practically speaking, it's not possible to turn the clock back totally to what we had, pre-industrial era sort of. That's what in scientific term we talk about. There are certain aspects that are now going irreversible. But according to United Nations Environment Programme Emission Gap Assessment Report that was released last year, all the commitments that the world has made so far, every country, they do their commitments around climate action. So their commitments, if they fulfill all those commitments, so they have estimated that we will be able to reach 2.7 degrees Celsius, but the level that we are supposed to remain below is 1.5 degrees Celsius. But that does not mean that, even we fulfill all commitments, we won't be able to achieve 1.5. Those commitments are not very ambitious. Those commitments are something that we can, add on. We need to add more aggressive actions. If we add those aggressive sort of actions, then definitely there's still a possibility. At least we can, remain below 2 degrees Celsius, and we can slow down the warming. We can slow down the sort of crisis that has engulfed this world. So that's a possibility.
Yeah. Zanch, let's hope commitment turns into action. Thank you very much for your time. And that brings us to the end of today's conversation. These stories may seem worlds apart. Heat waves in Europe, monsoon threats across Asia. but they are connected by the same warming planet. Climate change doesn't affect every country in the same way. Some face relentless heat, others face devastating floods, but the people paying the price have one thing in common. They contribute least to the problem. Climate change is no longer about just an environmental issue. It is a health crisis, an economic crisis, and a humanitarian crisis, and is increasingly a question of global justice. The question is no longer whether climate change is happening. The question is whether humanity can change quickly enough to keep pace. Thank you very much to Zainab Narim, climate analyst, for your insights. And as always here on One Voice, we aim to cut through the noise, bring you the stories that matter from the voices that know. And if you missed any part of today's show, be sure to go to our website, Asia One News. And until next time, I'm Craig Vermey, and thank you for watching One Voice.